Okay, so Gauranga book, page 100. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Gayate Girimnit Kripatam Hamande Shri Gurudini Dharmi Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. That's it. Okay. If you'd like to volunteer to read, that would be really appreciated. You just put a number in the chat for reading. I don't mind going first, so I'll put number 1. That night they had the second meeting at the house of Chandrasekhar. The Lord was chanting at the house, and Nityananda came there. Again they cried out, Nitai, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nitai, Gauranga, Nitai. Like that, they embraced each other. Then Lord Chaitanya just motioned to Srivas. Nobody knew what he was saying. He didn't say anything, just indicated something to Srivas. Somehow Srivas was so in tune with Lord Chaitanya that he knew exactly what Lord Chaitanya wanted. Lord Chaitanya wanted him to chant a special kirtan for the pleasure of Nityananda Prabhu. So he started to sing the glories of Krishna in Vrindavan, how Krishna was playing his flute on the side of the Yamuna, and how the gopis were singing the glories of Krishna. Okay. So this is a pastime which is happening at the house of Chandrasekhar. Yes. So of course they go to different houses and chant throughout the day, and even at night. This one is a nighttime chanting. But you can see the love here between Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. When they meet, they they just have such a deep affection with each other. Yeah. And what's also important in this section is that Lord Chaitanya, when he wanted, when he had a certain desire, he only had to indicate to Srivas that, okay, now let's do that, without even saying anything. Srivas was so in tune with Lord Chaitanya that he could, he understood exactly what had to happen next. Yeah. So sometimes it's said there's 4 classes of disciples. Have you heard this before? Has anyone heard this before? Okay, so the first class disciple is someone who knows the desire of the guru without the guru having to tell. That's a first class disciple or son. Someone who just knows, son or daughter, someone who just knows what the parents want, or someone who just knows what the guru wants without them having to say, because they know the guru so well. They just in tune with the environment and also the mood of the spiritual master, and they know what to do in the situation. That's considered first class. What do you think the second class disciple is like? If the first class just knows automatically. Any thoughts? Okay, second class disciple is one who has to be told, I would like this. The guru or the parent would tell that, this is my desire. And second class disciple is able to fulfill that perfectly. So that's a very good platform to be on, being a second class disciple. When the spiritual master asks something, they're able to execute it perfectly. Then the third class, what do you think the third class disciple is?
The guru tells what is to be done, but still the disciple doesn't do it. I
Still the
think, I'm not
disciple
sure.
doesn't. Okay, anyone else have a thought on this?
Probably the disciple likes to do what he likes to do rather than what the guru would like him to do.
Yeah, I can't hear you very well, Prabhu.
Okay, let me just see.
Are you far away from the mic?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. Right, is that better?
Yes, a bit better, yeah.
Yeah, I've just tried a different microphone. Okay, can you hear me now, Prabhu?
Yes, that's better now, Prabhu.
Okay, because I'm holding the microphone in my hand now.
Oh yeah, much better.
Okay, I'm just saying that sometimes maybe the disciple does what he likes to do rather than what the guru would like him to do. He picks and chooses his jobs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the disciple, the guru tells him what to do, and he does it sometimes and he doesn't do it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fourth class disciple, that's Bali Mataji mentioned that one. That is one who is instructed what to do and is not able to do it. He doesn't try, he doesn't execute the instruction. Yeah. So this is useful to know in order to serve our seniors and to get their blessings so we can progress in spiritual life. So Srivas Thakur here is a perfect example of a first-class disciple. He knew just from the motion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just from the move of a hand like this, just from an indication, just pointing, whatever it may be, he just knew what to do. This reminds me of I was listening to one of the glorifications of Tamal Krishna Goswami. Tamal Krishna Goswami was like Srila Prabhupada's right-hand man, you could say. For many years, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he served Srila Prabhupada. And I was listening to a memory by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami, our Guru Maharaj, and he was saying how Tamal Krishna Maharaj was a first-class disciple of Srila Prabhupada. They could be in a room, many devotees could be in a room together. Particularly in Prabhupada's last days, he was giving the example when Prabhupada wasn't able to sit properly and communicate fully because he was, he was on his deathbed effectively, and he was, like very faint. His energy was very low. He was very like whispering almost. But in that situation, all he had to do was just move his finger or gesture his hand, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew, okay, Prabhupada wants to close the window, or Prabhupada, it's time for his meal now, or whatever it may be, we should do kirtan now, or whatever it was. Just from the motions of his hand, Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew exactly what Prabhupada wanted to do. So there are examples around us as well in this world, a first-class disciple. And we should be eager for the association, not just of the guru, but even of the first-class disciples, such disciples. Yeah. This was a nice point. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions? So this is also applicable to serving any of our seniors, really, be it our guru, our parents, our superiors, Okay, so I'll continue reading. Then he started to glorify how Krishna and Balaram were with the cowherd boys. As soon as Nityananda heard this, he became stunned. He couldn't move. He started crying out, Krishna, Krishna. He was just shaking and he was absorbed. As soon as he heard Balaram and Krishna, he was an incarnation of Balaram, so it was too much for him. He was totally transported to Vrindavan just by hearing the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan. He collapsed on the ground. Everyone rushed around him and started fanning him. Bring him water. What happened? Lord Chaitanya said, you cannot wake him this way. He is not asleep. He is in ecstasy. He is in samadhi. Srivas, you have to go on chanting. Everyone, you have to chant. Only by chanting will he be revived. So they went on chanting the glories of Krishna. Srivas and all the devotees were chanting. Then Lord Nityananda started moving and coming back to external consciousness by hearing these pastimes. So this is the nature of the Rasika devotees, the very advanced devotees. They're really tasting the mellows of Krishna consciousness in the pastimes. Yeah. So here, when Lord Chaitanya, he thought, for the pleasure of Lord Nityananda, we should have this particular bhajan or this particular type of kirtan or pastime related. Then his ecstasy and his increased attachment, or his attachment to Krishna, would just increase. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. So not only did Srivas know what Lord Chaitanya wanted, Lord Chaitanya also similarly knew exactly which buttons to press on Lord Nityananda to make his ecstasy increase. Yes? So you can see how these devotees are so intimately connected, they're so intimately have an understanding of one another's desires. They so intimately know how to serve each other in such an amazing way. Yes. In fact, it was so much for Lord Balaram, for Lord Nityananda, he collapsed. It was just too much. He fainted. Yeah, he passed out. He was in samadhi. Right. And so they had to change their strategy and sing something else to bring him back. Okay. Okay, I'll read one more. All of a sudden, Nityananda Prabhu jumped up and called out, Krishna! He couldn't sit anymore. He jumped up and started running. Where is Krishna? Running here and running there. He was madly becoming anxious to be with Krishna. He became so absorbed in the pastime that he was like a cowherd boy running and looking for Krishna. Nityananda became so absorbed that he no longer knew where he was. He didn't know he was in the house of Chandrasekhar. He thought he was running in Vrindavan looking for Krishna. But in the external world, there was a house. There were trees and other things. He practically ran into these different objects. He was not really conscious of them. He was completely in Vrindavan. So the devotees were trying to protect him from smashing into these things. And he was laughing and crying and looking for Krishna. Lord Nityananda was jumping, and on one side, the devotees were trying to tackle him, hold him. But he would break loose from them and try again to go for Krishna, running this way and that. Yeah, so it's quite a scene, huh? That they come and meet together in this house of Chandrasekhar, you know. Imagine you were having a house program, you know, a devotee gathering at home. Yeah. This is what you can expect if Gaura Nitai come to your home. That there's this, you know, heightened levels of love and devotion, embrace, and then the kirtan starts, and then, you know, Lord Nityananda just faints because it's just so good. And then when he comes back to consciousness, he's just running around and crashing into everything in your home. So this is what happened at the house of Chandrasekhar. Okay. So you can see, even though he came back to consciousness, external consciousness, when he was in internal consciousness, he was fully Krishna conscious. And when he came to external consciousness, he was still more Krishna conscious. He was still had more separation from Krishna, right? So it just goes on increasing and increasing. It's not they brought him back to external consciousness, and then it was like, I missed that. You know, that was really nice. but actually he comes back and he's just even more enthusiastic. Just goes on increasing and increasing. So this is real prema bhakti. Yeah, just goes on increasing. Anyone else have any reflections on this reading so far? It's a bit hard to relate to, isn't it? Because we don't have that experience. Huh?
Yeah, it's very hard to relate.
Yeah.
So Lord Nityananda couldn't see the actual objects. All he was trying to do was, he was still in Vrindavan, isn't it? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So because of this song that was being sung, and he had such a that really sparked his spiritual emotions, then he wasn't thinking that he was Nityananda. He was thinking that he was in Vrindavan. He thought that he was Lord Balaram, because he actually is Lord Balaram, right? And so he is still in his mind, he was still thinking, I'm Lord Balaram, which in fact he is. And in this particular Leela, which was being narrated, then Lord Balaram's looking for Krishna, and so that's exactly what he did. He was still in the mood of the pastime. He was still absorbed in the pastime. Yeah. So why these pastimes are important for us, then, just to bring this down a little bit to our level, at least somewhat. See, because we all have an eternal relationship with Krishna. At the moment, we've forgotten that relationship. And we have to do everything we can to revive that relationship with Krishna. We have to chant attentively. We have to hear and contemplate on the pastimes of the Lord and the instructions of the Lord and his devotees. And this will actually awaken our forgotten original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. It will awaken our true spiritual identity. Huh? And it's a fact, we can have these experiences in our spiritual life when we advance in Krishna consciousness. It's a fact, because that dormant Krishna consciousness can awaken. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is offering us. He's offering us our real identity. He's offering us our full identity, our full relationship with Krishna. Yeah. And you can see what this looks like when it's fully awakened in the pastime here. So Hare Krishna, if you've just joined, then from the bottom of page 101, the last sentence there, in case you hadn't caught up with us, some of you who joined a bit later. Would anyone like to continue reading?
I can read a bit, but I don't know if this might be a bit of background noise, then you can tell me to stop.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So the devotees were trying to protect him. Is that right? That's where we... No,
I think it's the
sorry.
next one.
Finally, sorry.
Yeah.
Finally,
Okay.
Lord Chaitanya went and held him, and he became pacified. He was crying and tears were pouring down. Oh Krishna, oh Krishna. Srivas was still chanting, and Lord Chaitanya sat down and put Nityananda's head on his lap. Nityananda was in deep mood of separation from Krishna. Then Lord Chaitanya's tears started to pour from his eyes, washing the dust from Nityananda's Prabhu's face, and the devotees were all chanting. There was a really mellow mood of separation. At this time, Lord Chaitanya was so moved, he started to cry profusely. His ecstasy became more and more. Then Lord Nityananda sat up and put Lord Chaitanya's head on his lap. And Lord Nityananda's tears were washing Lord Chaitanya. Gadadhar Prabhu was watching, thinking, what is going on here? This is something very esoteric.
Right.
This is something like Ananta Shesha holding up Narayan. It was so natural, the way Nityananda was holding Lord Chaitanya, how they changed positions. Gadadhar, inside his heart, he had some realization. Actually, Balaram is the original form from which comes the Anantashesha, the transcendental snake that holds up Lord Narayan in the spiritual ocean, the casual ocean.
Okay. Right, so any reflections on this? Last two paragraphs? Hare Krishna, so we're just on page 102. No? Any questions about it? There was one sentence which stood out to me, which I'm sure we can all relate to. This is something very esoteric, isn't it? Right? It's like you don't even know what's going to happen next. And then it's hard to even understand what's going on, isn't it? As it's explained. Yeah. So, so Lord Nityananda's, he became unconscious, then he came back to consciousness, and he was running around knocking into things, and then they literally had to pin him down. And then Lord Chaitanya pacified him. He sat, like you can see it, maybe it's perhaps on Lord Chaitanya's lap, just lying next, kind of being next to Lord Chaitanya. And they were just in this mood of separation of Krishna. Yeah. So the environment that the devotees had created around the Lord was for his pleasure. Yeah, was for the pleasure of Gaur Nitai. The whole environment that was created in that room, it was so pleasing to them that they increased their separation of Krishna. And this is very hard to understand for non-devotees, right? Like how can anyone understand? How can anyone understand what the mood of separation is like, you know, for the devotees of Krishna? Because this kind of experience isn't available in the material world. Even if you're missing a friend or missing a family member, the remembrance of them, it doesn't effectively increase the association with them, you see. So here, even though they're separated from Krishna, they're feeling that their association with Krishna is increasing. And we've been reading about this in a similar way in the pastimes of the gopis, in our Krishna book reading. And the gopis, when Krishna is separated from them, they are also crying, and they're also in this mood of separation. But the ecstasy is actually increasing. Their love and attachment to Krishna is increasing because Krishna is subtly present with them. Yeah. So this is why it's really it's difficult to understand for non-devotees. I mean, even for us devotees, it's difficult to understand because it's otherwise it's easy to think that, you know, this is a really miserable scene here, right? That you know, here's a group of people, they don't have Krishna, and they're crying and wailing all night. This was the thinking of who was it we read about last week? This was the thinking of Gopal Chapel, right? He was thinking that, you know, these guys next door are just always screaming and crying all night. You know, they're crazy, but actually they're in a mood of deep separation of Krishna. So that was a very offensive thinking. It's something very esoteric, isn't it? This scene here. And not only that, so Gadadhar Prabhu, his story is given here, and his realizations are given here. So he's observing this, yeah, and even he's thinking, what's going on, you know? But he got some realization from being there, which is shared with us, which is very wonderful. And he was thinking how the movement of Lord Chaitanya embracing Lord Nityananda, and then they're changing positions, and now Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy is increasing, and he's crying uncontrollably, and now he's lying in the lap of Lord Nityananda. And when he saw that, he could see it was just like how Ananta Shesh, he supports Lord Vishnu or Lord Narayan, on the causal ocean. We've all seen that picture before. We've seen that picture before of Vishnu lying on Ananta Shesh, yeah? So he had that vision, he could see that. He had that realization. Yeah, and then he could see like, oh, this is actually such a wonderful thing, Yeah. Okay. Smita Mataji, would you like to continue reading?
Okay, thank you. Like this, on the second day of Lord Nityananda coming to Lord Chaitanya, there was so much profuse ecstasy and transcendental love of Krishna that everyone was filled with this ecstasy. And that ecstasy is the basis of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Everyone there doesn't know Krishna is God. They don't care whether Krishna is God. They just love Krishna. The degree of their love is completely ecstatic. When they think about Krishna, tears fall from their eyes, their hearts melt, and they just run towards Krishna. They don't care about anything else. They just want to be with Krishna. All kinds of amazing pastimes were going on, and the first and the second days of the meeting of Gaur and Nitai were very, very memorable. From that time on, they were inseparable.
Okay, so does anyone have any reflections or comments on this pastime you could share? Any questions even? I think this last couple of paragraphs is teaching us, what we can gain from being fully Krishna conscious. Because we're moving in our spiritual life, we're moving our consciousness from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness, from material world consciousness to spiritual world consciousness. Yeah, and so we're going from we've forgotten Krishna. We're trying to remember Krishna always. Yeah, we're trying to always remember Krishna, and as part of that, we have to know that Krishna is God. We have to know first. We're told that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. But going beyond that, the Brajabasis, they've forgotten that Krishna is God, and they've become more focused on their bhakti, their devotion to Krishna. Yeah? So their devotion to Krishna is more important than their knowledge of Krishna's position. Yeah, their devotion to Krishna is more important than their knowledge of Krishna, the Supreme. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Does it make sense? Yeah. So that's like the next higher level. And so that's when this kind of ecstasy can manifest, because as it says here, they don't care whether Krishna is God. They just love Krishna. Because their love is selfless, then it's going to be more pure. When the love is based on that this I can get something, when there's even a slight like hint of selfishness, that I can get something from my relationship with Krishna, or if we think that, you know, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, you know, he is the source of all opulences, so, you know, he can maintain me, then that's different from the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, because they simply love Krishna just because, you know, he was that coward boy in Vrindavan. He was just the all-attractive coward boy in Vrindavan. Yeah, simply that. They didn't care whether Krishna was God, what Krishna could do for them or not do for them. They didn't care. Yeah. And so the boys, the Rajagopas, they would play with Krishna all day, and all night they would cry in separation of Krishna. And similarly, gopis, the Rajagopis, they would cry in separation of Krishna all day and unite with Krishna at night time. Okay. And then so many activities, of course, happen in between. So these are all amazing pastimes, aren't they? And this is what Gauranga are remembering, all these pastimes of Vrindavan. Okay, so let's continue to the next chapter. Does anyone have any comments or questions before we move on?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Yeah,
So
great.
when you were saying that can we get to that stage? When can we get to that stage of loving Krishna unselflessly? Because it's always like, even like you say, a little tiny minute selfishness might be there. So how can one really get to that stage of complete unselflessness?
Yeah, really good question, Mataji. Thank you. I'm certainly not qualified to answer it because I'm not at that stage, but I can share at least what I've heard. And if anyone else wants to, welcome to add. I know you're all here from advanced devotees as well. So how do we get to that stage? It's based on the basic thing is, it says here, so the ecstasy is the basic, ecstasy is the basis of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Yeah. So how do we get to that level of ecstasy, isn't it? That prema bhakti. Yeah. So there are different stages. We have to progress in our Krishna consciousness. We can't think that, okay, I know I'm not supposed to think of Krishna as God, so then I'll just think of him as, you know, a gopi thinks of him, or I'll just think of him as Mother Yashoda thinks of him. No, we can't kind of jump to a higher level. That's known as sahajya. So, you know, in a sense, that's kind of bringing Krishna down to our level, you know, or that's making that level of devotion is making it cheap. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to make that level of devotion very cheap by thinking that or imagining that we are, you know, a resident of Vrindavan. Nor do we want to go the other way and, you know, get too much obsessed with, like, you know, if you do all these rules, if you follow all these rituals, then you can make rapid advancement in Krishna consciousness, and, you know, be so meticulous in all these things. Because then we actually forget that the purpose is loving Krishna. We become more interested in the mechanics, you know. So, like, you know, the arati has to be done this particular way with this many times around, and, you know, that all happens. Of course, it is part of the process, but we can't think of it as being the, you know, that just by, you know, doing the mechanical aspect of Krishna consciousness, then you know, I'll become a pure devotee. That's also not the right thing. So those are kind of like two extremes. What we need to do is be going down like the middle path. What's the middle path? We need to try and develop that devotion to Krishna on one hand, and try and follow the rules and principles on the other hand, and expect Krishna's mercy. expect the mercy of Krishna, expect the mercy of devotees. Yeah. And try and become more and more attached to Krishna. Always remember that all we're doing all of these different activities for is to become more attached and attracted to Krishna. Yeah. We're trying to get to the level of bhav, attachment to Krishna, the love for Krishna. So it happens through different stages, starting from having some faith in all these pastimes and the teachings, through to following the specific practices, chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles because of that faith, and then associating with the kind of devotees who will continue to build that faith, who will continue to build our strength and steady sadhana until we become very fixed and regular in our sadhana. And when we get to that stage, all the unwanted things in the heart, they gradually disappear. Yeah, all the unwanted things, that's called anatta nivritti. So we want to get to that stage called anatta nivritti, where all the unwanted things in the heart, they become removed just by practicing Krishna consciousness as a side effect of Krishna consciousness. Everything, all the bad qualities in our hearts, they become removed by Krishna's grace. Yeah, and then that love can awaken. Does anyone else want to add to this? And there's a lot that can be said actually.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Is that you can hear me, right?
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about the six limbs of surrender. Because you mentioned the mood of the gopis, and then at the same time we encouraged to follow the six limbs of surrender, where we think of Krishna as our parent, our maintainer, our protector. So how do we sort of transfer? Maybe you've already answered the question, but how do we transfer from that mood onto the gopis mood?
The six limbs of surrender.
Yeah.
So this is something that was given by Bhaktivedanta, right? The six limbs of surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what were those six? Do you know?
Yeah, doing things that please Krishna, avoid things that don't please him, and thinking Krishna as our parent and also our maintainer. And then finally is we're talking about fully surrendering to Krishna.
Okay. So yeah, accepting. So the first one is accepting things which is favorable for devotional service. Yeah.
Yeah.
So doing what's going to help us and rejecting unfavorable things. And then third one is believing that the Lord will protect us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we tend to think like, if I get too absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then I won't be able to earn my livelihood, or my material relationships will become affected. So once we accept everything favorable, reject everything unfavorable, then the third one is depending on Krishna's protection. Not that we should become neglectful of our worldly responsibilities and relationships, but we shouldn't depend on them. That's the thing. The next one is feel exclusively dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Then the next one is have no interest separate from the interest of the Lord. So this is the stage where one is selfless, actually. No interest except for the interest of the Lord. And then number 6 is always feel oneself meek and humble. Yeah.
Okay.
So the more we advance in spiritual life, the more we should feel that I haven't advanced. Yeah. It seems like a paradox, because the more advanced in the material world you become, the greater you feel your power and prowess over others. But in spiritual life, it's actually the opposite, because we're progressing towards someone who is already the most powerful person, Krishna, who's the greatest person, Krishna. So if we become close to that person, then certainly we would feel humbled, and meek. So this is final symptom of surrender. And you added something else, Prabhu, to that?
No, that's great, Prabhu. I mean, I'm just saying that because we're talking about Krishna's, thinking of Krishna, because the gopis forget Krishna as opulences and his greatness, that they just think of him as a friend.
Yeah.
And they, and they as they equal. So whereas we are also encouraged to think of him as our maintainer and like a parent to us. So I'm thinking that you have to sort of switch from one to the other eventually if you're going to get the mood of the gopis. Stop thinking of him as our maintainer and as our parent, or even somebody who should surrender to me. If we are thinking of him as an equal, then we're not I mean, it should come automatically, I guess, but but not as because he's great, we have to surrender to him.
Yeah, it does. It does come with advancement, but we should see how far advanced those devotees of Vrindavan really are.
Yeah.
We can actually understand how far advanced they are because they have that mood. They have that mood that even the Vaikuntha-vasis don't have, that even the Ayodhya-vasis don't have. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's how advanced the Brajavasis are. And it does come naturally. I wouldn't say automatically. Automatic means that, just all of a sudden, just happened. I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to explain it a little bit. So, it happens more naturally. And naturally, that sense of Krishna is my maintainer, it dissipates when one realizes who Krishna is in relationship with oneself. It's not that Krishna doesn't maintain you. Even in the pastimes of Vrindavan, when there's a forest fire, the boys take shelter of Krishna. When there's a demon, the gopis, they take shelter of Krishna. They're always taking shelter. When Nanda Maharaj, he drowns it, he gets taken away by Varun Dev in the river. He takes shelter of Krishna, and all the other gopas, they take shelter of Krishna. Yeah. When Mother Yashoda sees that Putana is taking Krishna away from home, then she takes shelter of the Lord. So that's still there. But the relationship with Krishna, that their personal relationship with Krishna is real and it's more prominent than that. This is my situation and Krishna will help me in my situation. They've got a real relationship with Krishna already, and that's the prominent thing. That's called Staibhav. They have that Staibhav. So that's
Sure.
actually an advanced stage.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Brilliant.
don't know if that makes sense though. Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Panchali, you wanted to make a comment or question?
No, it's just a comment, Prabhuji, on the selfless love. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
So it just kind of reminds of the lovely pastime of the gopis giving dust for Lord Krishna when Lord Krishna was in Dwarka, and then he wanted he wasn't feeling well, and he asked Narad Muni to get a pure devotee's the dust from under a pure devotee's feet, and nobody wanted to give that. And it was only the gopis who did that because they just didn't. So that's selfless love, isn't it? Because they didn't care whether Krishna got angry with them because they gave the dust of their feet. So they were ready to go to hell, even if it makes Krishna happy for a split second or makes him well or feel better. So that's, that's the selfless love we talk about, and that is why, and this is something we mentioned as well. That is why Uddhava bowed down to the gopis, who Uddhava, being so learned and being such a pure, great devotee of Krishna, even he ended up bowing down to and wanted just to be trampled as grass in Vrindavan, just to be able to, understand how deeply the gopis loved Krishna.
Yeah, amazing examples. Yeah. So Uddhava had he was kind of, he was a Dwarkavasi or a Mathuravasi, you see. So even though he had such a deep relationship with Krishna, it wasn't as selfless as the gopis, who were willing to give anything, who were willing to go to hell even for Krishna. So this might seem very far for us, but rest assured, we can all make progress in that direction. So maybe just something more positive we can meditate on for our own, spiritual, for our own sadhana. I always remember this statement that one Prabhupada disciple told me. He asked Srila Prabhupada about chanting, and Prabhupada said to him that I think he said something to the effect of, I find it really difficult to chant my 16 rounds, or something to that effect. But anyway, the answer that Srila Prabhupada gave him was so amazing. I still remember Prabhupada told me this to this day. This was many years ago. He told me. Prabhupada just in one sentence just cleared everything up for him. Prabhupada said, it's like drops of water on a stone. Chanting is like drops of water on a stone. So what does that mean? That means that if you go to like places like waterfalls, places like that, you'll notice like the water is constantly falling on the stone. Yeah, and the stone, it becomes so soft. You can take that stone, it's very, very soft. So the harsh stone, or like our hard heart, it can become softened. Just like even water, which is already so soft, because it's constantly falling on the stone. The constant falling of the water on the stone makes the stone soft, the stone soft as well. So in the same way, Krishna and his name is so pure and so soft, so gentle, so sweet, that even our hard heart can become melted by association with the sweet devotees, the sweet name of Krishna, the sweet service of Krishna. Everything about Krishna consciousness is all sweet. Yeah? And this can impact our hard heart. So we shouldn't feel that Krishna is too far away. Because Krishna is giving us what we need at this time by these different forms of association. So that was quite a long answer to Smita Mataji's question. Anyone else would like to add comments, questions? Otherwise, we can continue reading for a few minutes more. Would anyone like to read? Volunteer to read? Yes, Panchali.
It's a new chapter, isn't it?
That's right.
So Mother Sachi sees Gauranga as Krishna Balaram. One day, Mother Sachi said to Lord Chaitanya that she had a dream and she was very confused. What did the dream mean? So Lord Gauranga asked, "What was your dream?" She said, "Well, I was feeding the bhoga to our Krishna Balarama deities. At that time, Nityanand and you were there as small children. Nityanand told the Krishna deity, 'This is not meant for you. Now it is Kali Yuga. Now Lord Gauranga is the Lord, and he should get all the offerings. I don't understand what this dream means.' Lord Chaitanya said, 'It is very difficult to understand. Maybe it means that Nityanand is hungry. Let's invite him for lunch.' 'All right,' said Sachimata, and she started to cook a big feast." Shall I continue? Or?
Yeah, just continue through to the end.
Lord Chaitanya went to invite Nitai to come for lunch. At that time, Lord Nityanand was playing with some children on the side of the Ganges. He regularly swam across the Ganges. So Lord Gauranga called out, "Nitai, Nitai, come back. Mother Sachi wants to prepare prasadam for you." So Nitai got dressed and he came back. Lord Chaitanya told him, "One thing, please, no funny business." Nitai replied, "Me? I don't do funny business. You are the one that does funny business." Like this, the two brothers were talking. What they meant is a mystery. So the offerings were made to the Krishna Balarama deities, and then plates were put out. For some reason, Mother Sachi put out 3 plates. She was so ecstatic that she put out 3 plates. So then the Lords Gauranga and Nityanand sat down. She gave a mound of rice. She put the sabjis around and dal, the traditional way. Lord Nityanand would take his prasadam. Lord Chaitanya would take a mound of rice and put ghee on the rice and offer the Lord with tulasi. And there would be various cups of sabjis and dal on banana leaves. She was coming in and serving, and at one point she saw Gauranga and Nityanand were changed. They were Krishna and Balarama, and they were eating. She looked astonished. What is going on here? She fainted. Lord Chaitanya said, "What is wrong? What is wrong?" She looked down and she saw Lord Nityanand and Gauranga. She started crying. She didn't talk to anybody for the rest of the day. Very bad.
Very well. Thank you for reading that. Okay. So any reflections on this week pastime? Anyone?
And I would like to know what the funny business is.
Ah, that's a mystery. What they meant is a mystery. So Lord Nityananda was known for doing very peculiar things. Yeah. So when Gauranga was staying with his mother, Sachi Mata, Lord Nityananda, he was staying with Malini Mata, who is the wife of Srivas Thakur. He was staying in Srivas Thakur's house, and Chaitanya was staying in his own mother's house, his own house. Yeah. So Lord Nityananda was known for doing all kinds of erratic things. Sometimes he would he would just Lord Nityananda's bhav or his mood is an avadut. You know what avadut means? Yeah, okay. Avadut, it means like someone who is not on the bodily concept of life. So one such person is Sukadev Goswami. He's considered an avadut. He doesn't even wear clothes. Yeah, he's so renounced. And he doesn't feel affected, he doesn't feel ashamed, because he's not even on that bodily concept of life. So he has that particular type of standard, you know. So even Lord Nityananda, he was an avadut. Sometimes in the house of Srivas Thakur, he would remove his clothes, or he would wear his underwear on his head. He would do all kinds of erratic things, which would otherwise, for any normal person, would just be like inconceivable. But because again, Srivas Thakur was so in tune with the devotion of Lord Nityananda, he could facilitate that. Okay, so here you can see a sense of that. Lord Chaitanya saying, no funny business, don't try any of this stuff at my mother's house.
But Lord Nityanand, was he a grihastha?
So yes, later on, this is in the earlier years, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, then Chaitanya told Nitai to become a grihastha. So right now, Nitai is an avadut, or not exactly a sannyasi, but like that. But then Lord Nityananda went from being an avadut to grihastha, whereas Lord Chaitanya went from being a grihastha to a sannyasi. So it switched around a little bit. Anyone else? I could share one little instruction I had. This reminded me of. Would you like to hear it? From one of the pujaris, one of the head pujaris in ISKCON. Does anyone know who Janani Vasprabhu is? No? Janani Vasprabhu is the head pujari of ISKCON Mayapur. He's the brother of Pankajani Prabhu, some of you may have heard of. So I was quite fortunate to have his association some years ago. So I'd like to just share, if that's okay, some instructions he gave me. So I had been given Radha Krishna deities for my birthday when I was 21 years old. And I wasn't sure whether to worship them, because in ISKCON we're told, that Radha Krishna worship is very high level. But because these deities, they were given to me, it's not that I went out on my way to get them. They were just kind of gifted to me, and I was kind of like, oh, what do I do now? I had never done any deity worship at this time. I was just 21. And so I had the opportunity to meet Janani Vasprabhu, and I asked him, like, what do I do? And he gave me certain instructions, which this pastime reminds me of. So I thought I'd share. And one of the things he said to me was to worship Radha and Krishna through Gaura Nitai. That's what he said. To worship Radha and Krishna through Gaura Nitai. So I wasn't clear, so I asked what that means. And he explained to me that you can't approach Radha and Krishna directly. You can't just go up to Krishna and say, here's your bhog offering today. You know, the way we do, like we just come in running into the room, put the thing down, start ringing the bell, because we don't have that bhav that we can, appreciate Krishna as a supreme enjoyer. It's actually by mercy of Gaura Nitai that we can worship Krishna, Radha Krishna, or Krishna Balaram even in this case. Yeah, because they have the mood of Vrindavan, and if we don't have that mood, then we're not able to relate to them properly. But the mood of Gaura Nitai is different because they're giving that mood of Vrindavan. They're allowing us to access that mood of Vrindavan. So Gaura Nitai they consider very merciful. So he was saying to me to worship Radha Krishna or hear Krishna Balaram through Gaura Nitai. So I just thought I'd share that as something extra. So that's effectively what's happening here. My mother Sachi is feeding her deities Krishna Balaram, and in this dream she has Nityananda. Is it Nityananda who says? Yeah, it's Nityananda who says, you can't worship Krishna Balaram, you should feed me and Gauranga. So that's what she does. She feeds Gaura Nitai. And
So
actually
does
that way, Krishna Balaram are pleased.
So, Prabhuji, does that mean before praying to Krishna, so I've got a deity at home, so we actually pray to Nitai, Gauranga and Nitai first, and then we pray to Radha Krishna?
And when you're offering food, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the prayers that Srila Prabhupada has given us, isn't it? First we chant the Namo Mahavadanyaya prayer. You know that one?
Yeah.
And then we chant the prayer to Krishna, which is Namo Brahmana Devaya, that prayer. You know that prayer?
When I find out, yeah.
Okay, so these are the two prayers which we chant when we offer bhoga to the deities. So the first prayer is to the spiritual master, because by the mercy of the spiritual master we can reach Chaitanya Nitai, and then by their mercy we can reach Radha Krishna or Krishna Balaram, or any form of Krishna that way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to comment or question? I'll just stop the recording now.